Are you building AI automation workflows in n8n and constantly require the need of creating some sort of demo data or sample data so that you can test those workflows before releasing them in the production? Welcome to my course on AI automation powered by n8n. In the last lesson of this course, we talked about how to pin data, how to edit the output of a particular node, how to copy data from past executions. All these features and concepts helped you with faster execution, faster debugging, faster implementation of your workflows. Today we are going to talk about how to create mock data, and I'm going to explain 3 to 4 methods using which you can create mock data for n8n workflows to test your applications or workflows. Before we go into screen share, let's just understand what is mocking data and why it is essential while building these AI automation workflows. Well, data mocking is a concept where you create some sort of fake data or demo data or sample data that you can input into your workflow or any application that you are building. This fake data or demo data will be very helpful while building or developing these workflows so that you can test them for all possible scenarios. By mocking data, you can avoid making repeated calls to your external source or the application or the platform. This not only saves time but also cost as well. Secondly, real world data is not always readily, especially in bulk where all these scenarios are available. In those cases, you need this kind of sample data or mocked up data so that you can test your workflows with different real world scenarios. Thirdly, you might need to randomize your contact information, email records, transactions, orders data. This way you are not testing your AI automation workflow in a serial order or specific set of data, rather bring some sort of a randomness which is more relatable to the real world. Next advantage is by working with the small set of mock data or sample data, you know what it is going to produce as an output or as an input. So this becomes a predictable development of your workflow or any kind of application, especially in the initial phases. And finally, you avoid the risk of overwriting or updating some sort of live data or production data, because in the early stages of your AI automation workflow development, things can go wrong. Output from one node or another node could be unexpected, and that's where you do not want your live data source to be connected to your workflow. You want some sort of fake data so that if anything happens, you can quickly regenerate it and test out your workflow after fixing it. Now let's get to the screen share and look at 3 to 4 different ways of creating mock data for your n8n workflows. Alright, I'm logged into the cloud instance of my n8n workspace and I have a blank workflow created over here with the name called workflow 14 mocking data. So first thing we have to do with every workflow is to add a trigger. Let's add a manual trigger over here for now. Let's save it. Now in the first method of generating this mock data, I'm going to take you to a website called Mockaroo. So this particular website allows us to generate mock data. I am on the free plan right now, which allows me to generate about 1000 rows, which is more than enough for my workflow testing. But if you are going to test large data sets, then you can always use their paid version. It allows you to generate huge amount of data sets. It also allows you to query that data set or build some API so that those data sets can be mocked via API as well. And then you can use those live APIs instead of copy pasting mock data from this particular application. However, in this scenario, I'm going to explain you how you can download the mock data and either upload it into Google Sheets or directly use the edit feature that we explained in the last lesson of this course and paste it into the node itself so that we can use it for the rest of the workflow. So for example, over here you define basic set of customer schema. You can see ID is there, first name, last name, email, gender, IP address. And then over here you can mention some of the options which are there. As you see, it says blank is 0%. Email address is also 0%, but how about I want to create a data set that has 20% emails blank? So if I create this, then it is going to output the data that has 20% emails blank, because those blank email records can help us detect how our workflows behave when something unexpected is being inputted. So that ways you can get creative while creating this mock data as well. But this is just the default data, and then you can add another field. You can delete this field. I don't need the IP address, I just need this data. Maybe I need company over here, I can mention company. Then I can select a type. You can see so many types are there that you can use. These are all, but you can use some basic, color, encrypt, GUID, hex color, ISBN, frequency. In the commerce side of it, product description, credit card, credit type. So all this kind of templates are already available for you to leverage from this platform and create some sort of data that you require. If I go to travel, you can see that airport code is there, airport GPS code is there, and all this is going to help you create some sort of real world mock data using this platform. It does not stop over here. You can have some sort of like formula as well. You can see that there is a formula. You can use this formula to concatenate or multiply two fields which are already there, so that you can generate that kind of data. So you can leverage this platform at least to create 1,000 records in order to test your workflow, which is more than enough. I keep on using this platform and it does not stop over here. Rather, if you click on this generate fields using AI, it becomes very simple. So you can see in this, either you can describe your topic and specify the number of fields you want, or you can provide some sort of example data using which it can create the sample data for you for the schema that you already know. But let's try some of the example that it is showing. Let me say flight logs. Then I'll say replace existing fields, and you can see that 10 fields matching the flight records have been produced over here. And you can see most of these fields are following a particular type of template that this platform has already assigned to that kind of field, so that the data looks more and more real world. Over here we have already talked about how much you want blank percentage that you can specify over here. For the fields which have time, you can also specify what kind of randomness you need. So whether you need like the full day or you need the data between 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. only, you can specify that. Similarly, the numbers over here, you can specify minimum, maximum, it is hours, so it is 1 to 24. You might have some other sort of number. For example, if I go back again to generate fields using AI, we can specify over here like stock trades. Okay, so let's say stock trades, and I'll say replace existing fields. So now it is going to generate the data which more or less looks like the stock transaction history. And here things become more complex in nature. You can see that these are row numbers, stock symbol is there. There is another template that is there, so that you can get more and more close to that real world data. Here numbers are there, but there is decimal places. It's mentioning as 0, blank percentage is 0, but the minimum is 0.01. These are date time. Again, what kind of transaction history you want. You want last month, last year, 10 years. You can specify that time of date time history range as well, and it is going to output the randomness in that time period. Over here you can see they have used formula as well, sale price minus purchase price. So sale price is a field over here, and then purchase price is a field over here. So it is using the existing fields to calculate some sort of like profit over here. So it's more like a calculated field you can also use. And by the way, all this is using AI, and you don't have to think too much. Just specify the basics and it is going to produce the output of it. Now let's generate this data and see how we can use it in n8n workflow. So now I'm going to click on generate data at the bottom. You can also click on preview as well to see how the preview looks like for the data. Now the data has been generated. I'm going to go to the downloads folder. So mock data_json. This is the file that has been downloaded. I'm going to open this file, and you can see that all this data has been created. Let's Control A, Control C, and I'm going to go back. Over here, let's go back to the workflow that we had created in n8n. So this is the workflow that we have created. Imagine you wanted to start with this data and start building on top of it. So you can click this trigger node and open the configuration. Let's execute it once. It is outputting this blank data over here. What I can do is click on this edit icon that we saw in the last lesson of this course. If you have not watched that lesson, go and check that lesson out, because those were 2-3 important concepts that you must know while building your workflows in n8n. So if I click on this edit output, now it has opened up the editable mode. Let me delete this and paste this. Now this data of 1,000 records of stock trades is available to us. If I click on save, it is going to pin this data, as we again learned in the last lesson what is pinning. Now let's go back to the canvas and add some nodes to it. Let's add a if node. We can see if the transaction type was buy or not. Let's say this transaction, and we can say buy. Let's execute this. And you can see true branch is returning 537 records. That means there are 537 transactions which are of buy type. And then you have false branch as well, which is 463, that is of sell type. So you can now further keep on building this workflow that you might be building for some sort of evaluation or automation of the stock history or stock transactions that you are doing or your organization is doing. The second method of producing mock data is using some sort of LLM or AI. So let's get to the screen share and see how you can leverage ChatGPT in order to create mock data for you. So in this case, we already built this workflow in past lesson, which was more like a connecting multiple apps together, where we had this webhook connected to various Google Forms where users were signing up, and this workflow was executing to understand whether there is an email or not, and then processing them into Google Sheet, filtering the data, putting a Slack message, putting a task on the Notion board, and then finally updating the customer record in the Airtable. If you have missed this lesson of this course, you can go back later and check this out, but for now you can follow what I am trying to do. So this is expecting some sort of new user signups. So this is what we are going to mimic in ChatGPT and ask us to create some sort of mock data or sample data which is mimicking this nature of multiple user signups. So let's go to the ChatGPT. Here we have to specify the prompt for which we need to generate data. I have already written that for you. I'll just read it out. I'm working on n8n automation workflow, which I want you to generate mock data for. My workflow is about simulating user signups for an email workflow, and I'm testing this email automation workflow. Can you generate some random mock data for about 1000 fake user signups so that I can test bulk processing without needing real users? Make sure that you have minimum of 6 fields in the generated user data, and email ID is one of them. I can also say that some of the email ID fields should be blank to generate some randomness. So this way we can test our workflow for the scenarios where email was not mentioned. So let's submit our prompt. Of course, I have created a very simple and a verbose prompt, but feel free to fine tune it according to your needs. Oops, some kind of error occurred in ChatGPT. Let's again submit the request, and this time let's explicitly ask us to provide the data in a CSV format. So it has generated the data. It is asking us to click on this to download. So mock user signup CSV has been created. Let's save it. So now let's go to the downloads folder, and here is the file that has been created. Let's open it up. So you can see user ID is there, first name, last name, email, sign up date, and country is also there. Over here you can also see some of the emails that we asked us to put empty. These are also there. So empty email records can be tested in our workflow too. So there are a lot of records. So almost 1000 records we asked us. So it has produced us 1000 records. So you can import this CSV file into your Google Sheet and start testing if you are starting from the Google Sheet. Otherwise, what you can also do is ask to create some sort of JSON as well. So let us ask ChatGPT to create this same data in JSON format. Can you also provide? So it has generated JSON format. Let's click on this and download this. Let's go back to our downloads folder, and the JSON file is also available. Now I'll open this up. So same data has been generated using JSON format. So you can see 1000 records are there. So let's copy this data and go back. And now what I'm going to do is, in this particular workflow that we built, you can see that there is no Google Sheet. This workflow is expecting the data to be submitted from various Google Forms which are attached to this particular webhook. So as soon as people are submitting those Google Forms, this webhook is getting data and the rest of the workflow is getting processed. However, what we can do is we can open up this webhook node, and what I can do is click listening event. In fact, I don't need to click on that. I'll just stop listening. I can click on this edit icon, and over here you can see it is already outputting some sort of random data that it wants us to use for rest of the workflow. But this is not the data that we want. We want our customer sign up data or user sign up data. So I'm going to select everything here and delete it and then paste it over here. Let's save it. So it seems some sort of an error has occurred because this particular data is not well formatted to be imported into our n8n node. And there are two things that I am seeing. One, this error that is showing us unexpected non-white space character after JSON at position 178, line 2, column 1. So that's one error. The second error that we see over here is that all these records are individual records. They are not encapsulated into a list. So we want our ChatGPT to produce a list of all these items. So let's go back and ask it to fix it. This output is not working for me. Can you modify it so that it is returned as a list of items, or let's say JSON list of items? Let's see if this one works. Now let's open this one. So this time it looks like it has formatted it correctly. Let's use this one. Go back to our n8n. Let's delete everything over here and then let's paste this. And now let's save this. And now the error is gone and you can see that it has outputted 1000 items which were there. So we saw that how you can work with ChatGPT as well in order to fix any kind of data issues or syntax issues that you are having for the output or mock data that it has produced. Now if I go back to the canvas, you can see 1000 items are being outputted from the webhook node. And here this if node is checking if the email is not empty, then the rest of the workflow is executing. So that means for the scenarios where emails are not mentioned, we can test out this branch. Otherwise, the workflow can continue executing for rest of the 883 items. So far, we have learned two methods of creating mock data, which should be more than sufficient for you. However, you can also create custom data sets for your workflow using either code node or edit field set node. And you have already seen that live in action while I was building or explaining the lesson on expressions and code node. So let's quickly look at them again. So in the expressions lesson, I wanted to explain some sort of data transformation methods which are built-in methods available or JavaScript method. In order to do that, I had to create some sort of sample data. So what I did is I used a edit field set node, and if I click on it, you can see, and if I expand it a bit, you would see that I have pasted a small record over here with order number, customer name, address, email, and then there is an order object that has products in it. There are two products inside it. So this is the way of using JSON, but you can also add fields to it. So if I click on fields over here, manual mapping, you can keep on adding fields, and the value and the output that you want as sample data would be outputted from this particular edit field set node, so that you can use for rest of the workflow. However, keep in mind that edit field set node should be used when you need some sort of single record testing when you are in very early stages of workflow building. But if you need more complex form of data, already we have seen two methods of generating more complex data sets. However, you can also use code node in order to generate large and complex data sets. And how we did is, if I open up the code node lesson workflow, so you can see that this was the lesson that we went through in the code node lesson. If you have not watched it, you can go back and check how the code node works in that lesson. However, here we created some sort of snacks. So if I look at it, I just return the data structure n8n expects in the form of JSON over here. You need to understand what data structure is required. This JSON colon object is needed in order to wrap your entire record so that it can work successfully. If I click on it, it is going to return me not this JSON, but the records which are inside it in the form of a list. So you can see that I outputted 10 records over here. So this was pure example of using JSON, but that is not just the case. You can write code as well. So if I look at this one, here you can see I am using some sort of a for loop to iterate over various items are there, and then dynamically creating some sort of reviews. So this is an example where you can write code. If you want to write code, you can write code and generate data for you. However, there is no such need of it because you already have platforms like Mockaroo, or you can use some sort of an LLM like ChatGPT in order to create sample data. But still, in case if you have some sort of custom logic that you want for which the test data should be generated, you can leverage code node as well. And the final way, which is more or less not that much useful, is using customer data store node. If I go back to the canvas, you can click on this and search for customer data store node. So you can see that their n8n training provides you these two nodes that generate some sort of data. So if I click on customer data store, it is showing us actions are get one person or get all people. I'll select get all people because I want more data. If I execute this step, it is going to produce, okay, it produced 5000 records, but that's not the case. It is producing 5000 records because we are inputting 1000 items to it. So if I just delete it, let's independently run it. Now if I execute it, it is going to output 5 records. So you can see that it has, although a limit of 5, even if I say 500 record, it is not going to output 500 because this particular node only has data for 5 records. So if you are playing with n8n nodes or learning some of the concepts, you can use this, but these are just 5 records, not much of use in terms of really testing your workflow. But the first 3 methods that I explained in this video are going to be your go-to methods for generating mock data for testing your AI automation workflows. And now with all this knowledge, you should be able to build your workflows in a smarter way, faster way, and with less friction. In the next lesson of this course, I'm going to talk about another important concept of n8n, which is sub workflows, which helps us break complex workflows or complex logic into different sub reusable components so that our workflows become more efficient and more cleaner. So I'll see you in the next lesson of this course.